Rick Carlin and I were playing one-on-one before practice. Larry stood over in the corner and he watched us. He says, "You guys are terrible." "What do you mean?" "Don't say that." And he says, "I could beat you both." "No, you can't." And he says, "Yes, I can. I can beat you both. In fact, let's go right now. $5 per person. I'm going to play $5. And I said, "Well, all right." He says, "And I don't get a dribble." He says, "I get the ball first." You know how silly it looks when two guys are guarding one guy. We're playing to 5 baskets. He shot it, basket. He got the ball back, shot it, basket. I said, "Rick, we don't stop this guy. We're going to get cut today." He loved challenging situations.
Vault unlocks. History calls.
And now, your host for Basketball Record, Adam Ryan.
Welcome. My guest is Fred Roberts. We trace his journey from BYU alongside Danny Ainge, Greg Kite, and Devin Durant to USA basketball, a stint in Italy, and an NBA career with the Spurs, Jazz, Celtics, Bucks, Lakers, and more. Plus, stories of George Gervin, Artis, Gilmore, John Stockton, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and life after basketball. Since recording, his sister has become Riverton's mayor. Congratulations, Tish. Thank you to former guest and great friend of the show, Jim McElvain, for the introduction to Fred. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Cue the tape. My guest today carved out one of the most fascinating basketball journeys of his era, from starring at BYU to starting his pro career in Italy to playing 13 NBA seasons across 7 franchises and winning a title overseas with Barcelona. Fred Roberts, thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Adam.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you to your friend Jim McElvain, great friend of the show, for helping us connect today. I really appreciate that. Now, I believe you grew up in Riverton, one of 6 brothers. How was that environment and how did it influence you in terms of your competitiveness in sports?
Well, I think it was a big reason. 5 brothers, 1 sister. She was the oldest, and 6 boys. And in fact, she's probably going to be the new mayor of Riverton this year.
Wow.
She's pretty accomplished. But growing up, my oldest brother was just a mean, ornery kid, and he made us kind of tough or cowardly, a little bit of both. We always played ball together. My dad wasn't much of a ball player. He went to BYU on a music scholarship and played in the band. But with 6 boys, that's what we did. It was a small town. We had a really good Little League baseball program that got us going, and we started playing Little League baseball. And back then, we played basketball. You just played junior high and maybe 10 games. But we did that, and then we went into baseball, played, I don't know, maybe 20 games, and then for a little bit of football. I always went and watched my older brother play ball through junior high, high school, especially in high school. We played at Bingham, and he was on a team with he's a little bit younger than this guy named Bruce Hardy. Bruce was one of the few high school athletes to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And we got to watch him play football, basketball, baseball, and I'd go to so many of those games, and it just inspired me. I loved it. It was fun to see his success, see how talented he was, and I think that's what kind of got my excitement about sports going, is just all of that, and then wrestling with my brothers, playing out in the yard, fighting with each other, and sports kind of came natural to me.
Just a quick aside, did any of that musical talent find its way into yourself or any of your other siblings?
Well, I tried. We all had to take singing lessons. We had to take piano lessons, and I played the piano until I started crying one day, and they said, "Okay, you don't have to do it anymore." I played the baritone, and I did enjoy that. I loved playing the baritone all through junior high, not so much in high school, but
Very talented family by the sounds of things, including your sister, who sounds like she could be the new mayor there of the town, which is a fantastic achievement. I understand that baseball may have been your first love. I read an article where in a particular tournament game, you threw a no-hitter and just for good measure had a solo home run. Did being a pitcher or playing baseball have any impact on how you then would see the game of basketball?
Well, with baseball, because we'd had such a great little league program in our small town, I don't know how we got so lucky, but we had really great coaches in our small town, dedicated their time to helping us and our teams. So it was easy to love that. And, I could throw the ball, I could throw it hard, and I could hit the ball. We were just always active. We went from season to season. If it was football season, that's what we played in the yard. Baseball, we played baseball in the yard. And actually, that's how I ended up not playing baseball, because I went to BYU and I was going to pitch a little bit for them, but went out to practice one day. It was sleet, snow, cold, windy, and the basketball team was in playing in the gym. And I said, I think I'm done. I'm not going to go out there and battle this weather. I'm just going to be a basketball player.
What height were you at this time when you were on the baseball mound as a pitcher?
You know, I was always one of the biggest kids in Little League and then junior high, but in high school, so I started out as sophomore year, I was probably 6'6", and then when I finished as a senior, I was almost 6'10".
Wow. Okay. I'm 6'1", and I think, oh, that's not too bad height-wise. And then I talk to guys like yourself and Jim McIlvain and whoever else, and I think, yeah, I'm pretty much a small fry.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't like about Jim. I don't like walking through the halls with him because it's uncomfortable. You're the tallest guy, and then all of a sudden, this big giant standing next to you.
What's he, 7 foot? 7'1", maybe?
He could be 7'1", yeah.
He's just rubbing it in, isn't he?
When you did mention that a no-hitter and a home run, I actually have a baseball upstairs that was saved from that game. So I wondered, how did you see that? Did you somehow come in here and find that baseball?
I've been lurking around the outside of your house just waiting for an opportunity to get in. No, I just did some deep research. I was really impressed to see that you were starring across multiple sports. Back on the hardwood, you achieved a rare feat at Bingham High School, state titles in back-to-back years, and I believe you moved up a class. In 1977, it was the 3A, and in 1978, you moved to 4A and won again. I read that you were the MVP or Player of the Year both seasons and a Parade All-America honour to go with it. So clearly you were on the national radar. When you look back on those great achievements with those state titles, what sticks in your head from that amazing time in your life?
Going to Bingham High School, it was a community. So many of these high schools now, the communities bleed into each other and there's not the real community team. But this was. We had a lot of history at Bingham. It's an old mining town, a melting pot of different ethnicities. And so there's a lot of pride. And we were on the west side of the valley, which was not wealthy, but we had a bunch of tough kids who played hard and worked hard. In fact, I just this past week, I keep in touch with an old teammate from high school, Brad Fulmer. His dad was a boxer. He fought for the middleweight championship, and his uncle won the heavyweight championship way back. I don't know, must have been in the 50s or something. Those are the kind of kids we had at this team, and Brad was kind of a guy who was more of an emotional, really good player, but he was the kind of a tough kid, maybe had 11, 12 surgeries on his leg and had to limp around, but he was a starter in our championship game. He had more points than me until the last 3 or 4 minutes where I made some free throws and went ahead of him. And he was griping about that the other day. He says, I had more points than you. And yeah, for a while you did.
You came home strong.
Yeah.
Looking back on those memories must be really strong moments of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And our coach was a kind of unique guy, and he coached there for 35 years. But by the time I got there, they'd won a couple of championships with his teams. But he was a fiery guy, yeller, screamer. He pushed us pretty hard in practice, and but there was such a great camaraderie, toughness, and let's go out there, we're going to beat these guys. It was a lot of fun. And just having that community, we had a lot of old-timers, people in their 70s and 80s coming to watch us play, and they didn't have any kids or grandkids on the team, but it's just that was a community thing to do, and I really loved that part of it. I grew up in the sweet spot of the world. I mean, in the 60s and the 70s, in a small town was awesome.
I believe that one of your brothers was a senior your freshman season when you joined BYU. What was the recruiting process like, and was there many other schools involved?
There were, but I felt like it was a dream to be able to play with my older brother. I wasn't able to play with him in high school because he was 4 years ahead of me, but going to BYU, he was on the team, and I just kind of really thought that would be a great experience to be able to play ball with him. And so pretty early on, I knew that that's where I was going to go, and so teams backed off a little bit. It was a great time going on the road with my brother. It wasn't a great year for him. The year before, he was a starter. They were a mediocre team. I came in the next year, another guy, Gervin Durant, who was an All-American. We both came in the same year, and my brother and another guy took away all their time. They went from starters to 0 minutes practically, and so it was really frustrating for my brother. He was still supportive of me, but he was pretty frustrated and disappointed that he didn't get to play his senior year.
A tough adjustment to make, especially when a star comes in. Gervin Durant, Greg Kite, Danny Ainge, yourself, those names are just littered throughout the record books at BYU. And had a lot of fun researching and learning about your careers there in college. As a freshman in the 1979 season, you averaged over 14 points and almost 7 boards a game. Per the record books, you had 3 double-doubles, 8 20-point games. You had a 30-point outburst and 5 games with double-digit rebounds, all as a freshman. So before we get to that 1981 campaign, which is very well known, how do you look back at that first season yourself on the Cougars?
Well, it was a great learning experience. We were a pretty good team, and I wish I had paid a little more attention to stats. The only thing I thought about, we win or we lose, because stats are pretty important. You know, Danny Ainge, he scored a lot of points, and we won games. I do remember the game against UTEP. I think 30-10 as a freshman. Things just felt really good. We watched a game right before us, a JV game, and I don't remember Lewis Lloyd. He played for the New Mexico Military Academy, and he was playing this JV game against the UTEP, and he was just killing it. Watching him play, and he kind of got me in a real flow watching him, how he was just throwing this team, and he was so good. And then we went out and played UTEP, and I just kind of continued on what he did, even though we had no relation or didn't know him. And he was a good NBA player. I didn't expect that to happen because he was at this place, Little New Mexico Military Academy or whatever they called it. But I'll never forget watching him play that and then going into the UTEP game and having great success in that game.
1981 was your standout season at BYU. You played 32 games, and speaking of stats, you averaged almost 19 points, 8 rebounds a game, and shot 58% from the field. You put together one of the most iconic NCAA tournament runs by beating Princeton. Then you demolished UCLA to reach the Sweet 16, and that's when Danny Ainge delivered the school's signature moment, that coast-to-coast layup with a couple of seconds left to edge out Notre Dame by 1 point, which sent you to the Elite Eight for the first time in program history. All that said, what are your memories of that amazing run, and particularly that finish versus the Fighting Irish?
Junior year for sure was my best year, maybe ever, including the pros. I came in that year. We had a good team. Ainge was at his peak. We had good size, rebounders, shooters. Our conference had great teams, so we were well prepared. Utah had Vrains and Chambers. Mannion, they had 3 guys who played in the NBA. San Diego State had some great players. Wyoming. Our league was really strong, and going into the playoffs after that, I think we were prepared, and with the ties and all that, we ended up being the 3rd seed, and so we were sent way out east and played Princeton, and that was kind of a jump start for us. It's never easy playing Princeton because they're so methodical in the things they do and their style, and they're so disciplined. When we played UCLA, we were just rolling. I think they came in thinking that, these guys, they can't run with us. In fact, I think Al McGuire, you watch the tape, and he keeps saying over and over, it's just a matter of time. These BYU kids are not going to be able to keep up with UCLA. They just can't run with them. They just don't have the speed. We were running fast break drills against them. It was pretty awesome. And I remember a lot of those players, but looking down the end of the bench, and there was that big giant Mark Eaton sitting on the end of the UCLA bench. And I kept looking at him. So, what is that guy doing on the bench? He is a giant. I talked to him a little bit after that, and he said, yeah, he wasn't very happy about his experience there, not being able to play more. And then when we played Notre Dame, I really actually felt pretty confident. And I remember about 2 or 3 plays before Danny had his coast-to-coast, he went in almost the exact same shot. He finger rolled it up there, and Orlando Woolridge went up and blocked it out of there. And they called goaltending.
The steal by Ainge, blocked by Woolridge, goaltending Woolridge. What a smart basket that was. Orlando Woolridge, between him and the basket, he floated it up real high. Woolridge could only goaltend if he hit it.
And Balif hit the shot at the top of the key or whatever, and that put us ahead. And I felt like, okay, we got it. Then Tripucka hit a great shot. Really amazing shot in the corner.
15 seconds to play. Notre Dame has to do something different. Sensational. Tripucka stop with 9 seconds. Notre Dame ahead by 1. And Brigham Young has 8 seconds to win the ball game.
When Danny did the coast-to-coast to win it,
and there are 8 seconds to go.
All they had to do was keep Ainge in front of him instead of chasing him. And then he did the crossover at half court. He went behind his back.
Ainge against Paxson.
Paxson got behind him and started chasing him.
5 seconds. Inside. Ainge scores with 2 seconds. 1 second on the clock. It is all over. It is all over.
Same shot. I think Orlando, he went up. Never asked Orlando about that, but to me it looked like he was short-armed it. He was afraid he was going to get the goaltending again and give away the game. I thought that was amazing that happened almost 2 plays in a row.
Ainge drove through pretty much the entire team on the way to the basket. Right after the game, even though we don't get to see it, or at least on the YouTube clip, you were interviewed on the court. Do you have any recollection of talking about the game in the moments after it actually happened, or is that just a blur all these years on?
Actually, no, I do not remember that. I remember playing in Virginia, and them asking him, trying to talk to me. I was, no, I'm not going to. I'm mad. I don't want to talk to you.
That's obviously a tough one. A couple of days later, they ended your run, I think, by about 14 points. You'd already cemented the team's legacy, really, by that stage. But yeah, a tough loss against Ralph Sampson and the number 1 ranked Virginia Cavaliers.
Were they ranked number 1?
My notes here, I've got Ralph Sampson's number 1 Virginia. So I'm pretty sure they were number 1 at the time. But
oh, good. I don't feel so
bad. An incredible season for you. Senior season, I've heard on a couple of other podcasts that I listened to, you weren't as happy with the way that transpired, and perhaps in hindsight, it may have been worth looking at turning pro after that junior season.
It was never a thought to do that. There weren't many guys coming out then, but it would have been better for me to come out after my junior year for sure. I was a better player. I was more prepared, and I'm going into the senior year. I look at our team picture and I say, wow, I guess I didn't realize we got 2 or 3 freshman guards coming in brand new. And I don't know, we didn't have that perimeter guard who could push the ball up the floor and get out and go and hold the dynamic of the team. And I'd played 3 years with Ainge, and we were just going. That senior year, that kind of disappeared with Danny, where he had that chutzpah or energy. And even with the coaches, he had that energy, was able to relax the coaches. Well, Ainge is here. We're going to be okay. And I wasn't as prepared. We played in the World University Games, and that was about 5 weeks. We were traveling. We were playing ball, working hard. And when I got back to BYU, maybe I took too much time off. I definitely wasn't in the kind of condition and shape that I was the year before. And that hurt me. And then we just didn't do well. We weren't a very good team. And then we went to this style, well, let's just try to win by holding the ball and not letting the other team get the ball. I had this mentality that says, I can't shoot unless I make it, because I had a high field goal percentage. When I went to Boston, I finally learned from Ainge. Ainge would go in and he'd look at the stat sheet, and he wasn't looking at how many shots he made. He'd look and see how many shots he took. And if he didn't have enough shots that he had attempted, he'd be upset. Where I'd go in and go, how much did I miss? How many shots did I miss? He didn't care if he missed. And I think that hurt me to have that mentality, especially my senior year, where they needed me to be a better player.
Well, thank you for your honesty there. It's funny to hear Danny Ainge's reflections here. Clearly, Danny was a fantastic baseballer as well and had ties to the Toronto Blue Jays already by this stage. Did you have many conversations with him about your baseball prowess in your early years versus his? And did you ever compete on the baseball diamond?
We didn't. And this is one of the reasons I ended up going to BYU. Danny was a great recruiter. I'm mad at myself. He wrote me a few poems. If we get Fred Roberts here, we get a rebound, we're going to be so good. And he's quite a poet. He can put a poem together. But I remember they came to cover my basketball games, he and some of the guys on the BYU team. And then he came and watched a baseball game. But that would have been nice. Would have been interested to go and throw him some batting practice or something. That would have been a lot of fun. I wish I'd done that.
Would have been good to see you maybe give him the chin music, perhaps.
For sure. That was one of my specialties, is just throw it up high on the backstop or something, just wild enough to not let anybody feel comfortable with standing there.
I love it. Now, you mentioned Team USA representation. Just for some context for our listener, you were a consistent presence in USA basketball. The 1978 National Sports Festival in Colorado Springs was the first time I think you played for Team USA. And in 1979, you returned and helped your region reach the final. I think it was a silver medal. You were named first team all-tournament and the runner-up MVP before leaving the title game. I'm not sure if you remember this, because what happened? After 3 minutes, you suffered a concussion, possibly a broken nose, and some chipped teeth, just for good measure. I was going to ask, what do you remember? But do you remember that run before the injury?
Yeah, I remember. I'd been back to that sports festival, I think 2 or 3 summers. This may have been third summer. Going back there, I was playing really well. We had a good team. We went to play the South team with James Worthy, Sam Perkins, Jimmy Black. They had a heck of a team, and that's a team that we struggled against. And this is what I was told in that game. It was early in the game. It was a loose ball or something, and Jimmy Black was running up the court, and I dove, and his heel came up and hit me here. And I think that's when I chipped 7 teeth. That knocked me out. And so I came down on my face on the floor. I just remember coming out of it. It was the next morning. I was in the hospital, and my mother was there, laid there, and I felt my tongue, and I said, there's a chipped tooth. There's another one. So I started counting all these chipped teeth. I didn't know that I'd come out of it a couple times before. I said, Mom, I've got some chipped teeth. She says, I know, Fred, you told us. I did? I don't remember. I made the team. They took the top 10 guys on that team, and we went to Brazil. They didn't know if I was going to be able to go because of my concussion, because of my injury. I wanted to go really bad. I told my wife last night, I said, maybe my most favorite memories are playing on those USA teams, and man, I wanted to go represent us in Brazil against all these international teams. And the doctor finally cleared me, and I was able to play and travel to Brazil. And we went down there, and 2 weeks, won ourselves a gold medal. And be able to stand out on a court and hearing our national anthem in a foreign country, it was one of the great feelings I've ever had. It was just awesome. You Australians, you guys experience that occasionally.
Occasionally. In basketball, we've got a very good team, but not quite great enough. I'll ask you about Brazil, the junior world champs, in just a moment, but I think just prior to that, you were part of a US select team in 1979 that toured China for a 5-game Goodwill series. It was really tough to find information about this, but I believe the opening game that was at the Municipal Gymnasium in Peking, which is now Beijing, there was roughly 18,000 fans in attendance, and it was national TV coverage. The recaps suggest that the USA edged China 3-2 in the series. Just a few quick details. Please correct me if these are wrong. I've got here that one practice drew almost 1,000 local coaches. Your team attended a banquet that featured a whole duck on the menu, and your squad apparently had the sight of endless bicycles that were rolling past the team hotel. How accurate was any of that, and what actually does come to mind when you think of your trip to China?
On the way over, we flew Japan Airlines, and I remember eating on that plane. It wasn't appealing to me. I didn't like it, so I didn't eat very much. On the way back, flew the same airlines. I ate everything. After being in China for 2 weeks. Okay, good. This is awesome.
I'll have this.
Yeah, because at 2 weeks there, I think I lived on marmalade and toast. I kept looking for the Chinese food that we were used to eating here in the States. No, there was none of that. We went to that banquet, and I thought, okay, we're going to banquet, finally get something to eat, and no, he says, where's the marmalade and toast? We bussed everywhere, and there weren't many cars. The only cars we see were the government cars, and there were buses and bicycles forever. The streets were really wide, but there were no cars, just bicycles, bicycle traffic jams, thousands of bikes. It seemed like a third world country. Ox carts, they did have those on the streets sometimes. Everybody was dressed the same. There's no color, except for the children. They wore some color. They had some colorful outfits, but everybody else wearing uniforms. And it was interesting playing there because we're used to fans being excited, being raucous, and these people, nobody stood up. They'd sit in their seats. They would sometimes clap, but mostly you'd hear if they didn't approve of something, they thought it was a bad call, you'd get the whistles.
Oh.
That's the first time I ever heard that, where you get the whistles for disapproval.
Oh.
And I know they do that in Europe too, but I think I played against the biggest guy I've ever been around in my life. This guy, he hit me in the face. I just remember his whole hand practically going around my entire head. Big giant. Oh, he was so big. Easily 450 pounds and 7'5" or something. I tried to move him. There was no moving him.
He was the Great Wall of China, literally.
He literally was, yes.
I've got his name here just because I saw it in one of the articles. I don't know how to pronounce it. Mu Tiao Chiu or something along those lines. Apparently about 7'2" per the newspaper reports, but that could be wrong as well.
We call him Chairman Mu.
He seemed like he was a larger-than-life figure. Well, you certainly had plenty of travel early in your life internationally. You mentioned the Brazil World Championships. Very briefly, just for the context of our listener, you went 8-0 and won gold by beating Brazil by about 20 points in the final. And your roster included names that listeners would certainly know. James Worthy, Sam Perkins, Fat Lever, and Sleepy Floyd, I believe, just to name a few. So some really good memories there from your time in amongst the USA basketball system there, Fred.
Yeah, that Brazil trip was great. That was quite the team. James Worthy, Sam Perkins. Oh, gosh, I'm trying to think. Terry White was on that team, I believe, but just some tremendous athletes. And this Matt Clark kid, before one of our games, he went in and he went to dunk the ball, and it caught the front of the rim and just the backboard blew up. We're in a place called Presidente Prudente. That was a championship game to get out of that pool. So, of course, we got the backboard that's been destroyed. I think we started the game maybe 2 hours later. They were able to go find a backboard somewhere. I don't know how they did it. They replaced the backboard. We played the game. That was such a good team. One team we played, we're all cheating on defense because we knew if we stole the ball, we were going to go dribble down the court and get a dunk. So it's all kind of a competition. Throw it to my side. Come on, throw it to my side. And we did a steal and we dribbled down there and dunked the ball. I think Scott Hastings was our center. Worthy and I were playing the wings. 2 6'10" guys playing the wings on a 1-3-1. It was impossible to make a pass against either one of us because we were just too long. We played the Israeli team and they almost started cheering for us. We did have dinner with them after, and they were just acting like we were celebrities to them, and it was way fun.
A precursor to what happened at the 1992 Olympics when the Dream Team started playing and you were doing that 13 years prior. You were selected by the Milwaukee Bucks in the 1982 NBA draft. It was the second round. You were the 27th pick overall. Before we discuss your move to Europe, where were you on draft day and how did you learn that the Bucks had selected you?
Yeah, I was with my girlfriend at the time, my current wife. I was too nervous, and I knew I didn't have a good year. Wasn't really hopeful of a high draft pick, which turned out to be true. I actually don't remember how I learned of the draft. Of course, I was very interested, but I was pretending not to be because I was afraid I was going to be disappointed. Do know this, that the next day or something, a couple of reporters from Wisconsin called and they asked me about the draft, and Paul Pressey was the first pick for the Bucks, and then there was me, and Don Nelson was the coach at the time, and he had us go back to New Hampshire. Pressey and I, Don Nelson had a basketball camp there when he was a Celtic. Just had us back there for the weekend. I'd just had a root canal, and I wasn't feeling great. Nelson, he looked at me and he said, I don't know why I drafted you. I don't want you.
Wow.
I guess Wayne Embry, he wanted you, so we drafted you. I don't really want you. And I thought, oh, man, I was already feeling bad enough. Again, looking back, he probably was testing me, and I should have just said, I'll tell you why you drafted me, because I'm going to be a good player, and I'm going to be tough, and you're going to be glad you have me. But instead, I went to Europe.
That's really tough to hear, though, isn't it?
Especially coming from BYU and Don Nelson, you're sitting there next to you, smoking his cigarette and cussing and swearing. I'm like, what's happened to me? I'm not in Provo anymore, I guess.
Yeah, big change. Well, 2 months after the draft, and with Milwaukee in talks with former Celtics great Dave Cowens, who was looking like he was going to unretire and come back to play in the NBA, you decided to move to Italy and play in their professional league. Please correct me on the pronunciation. Is it Fortitudo Bologna?
Correct. Yeah, Bologna. I think they still are 42, though.
Right. So you became their go-to scorer, putting up 19 points and 8 rebounds per game, depending on which source I was looking at.
Let's go with 25.
We'll go with that, based on first-hand experience. Apparently, your coach spoke very little English. The fans were rowdy, and it wasn't uncommon, even at that time, for objects to get thrown onto the court. And you didn't speak Italian. I believe you got married in Italy early 1983 to Penny.
That's correct.
How did you manage all that at the same time, trying to adjust to this whole new life, Fred?
I'd been to Italy when I was in college. BYU, we took a team over there. So my experience there, we stayed in kind of crummy hotels. So that was my impression. I thought that's what it was going to be like. So I went over there, and we had this American guy, but he was playing as an Italian. And he was the one who took me around and said, hey, here's a place that you could stay. And I don't know, this is kind of a gripe session right now. He says, this was a great place. This is where I stayed and loved it. It was up in the hills, private. I didn't think there was going to be anything better, so I took that place. Later in the year, I went and had dinner with him at his apartment. What? I could have been here, and I'm up there in that dump? The coach spoke no English. He was pretty arrogant. I think the year before they had a good team, I guess. But he wanted to have all new guys, and so we were young. In fact, I think we had just one guy older than me. Some of them were still in high school. We were not very good. When you talk about the fans, they were rabid. There were 2 teams there in Bologna. They called that the rival series or something. When we played those guys, we had to wait 30 minutes at least for the smoke to clear because there were smoke bombs on the court and there was fireworks going off in the arena. Played Milan. D'Antoni was on that team.
Okay.
Mike D'Antoni ended up being a great coach. He was on that team with this guy, Minighin. You'd probably heard of him. He was a great Italian player. He was like an Adonis, a big giant. He just liked beating the crap out of me. Just throwing me around like a rag doll. What made the difference for me, we got over there and I got in shape. There was an NBA group of players who were together that came over and played various teams throughout Italy, I think maybe even Europe. McHale was on the team. I think Trapuca was on the team. James Donaldson, Michael Ray Richardson, guys like that. Fortunately, we played them in a practice game. And, of course, they destroyed us. But I think I played my best game ever. And I scored 43 points. That was one of those games where you have a timeout and the coach said, what are we going to do? I said, just get me the ball. I had a contact issue. Every time I blinked, my contact would slide off my left eye. And my shorts didn't have a drawstring in them, so they were falling down. I kept trying to pull them up. And with all that, I just couldn't miss. I was on fire. And of course, the NBA guys, they didn't want to be scored against. I mean, they're up 20 points after the first quarter. But I played well enough that Stan Albeck was the coach of that NBA team. Milwaukee traded me to New Jersey while I was in Europe. At the end of the season, New Jersey traded me to San Antonio, and Stan Albeck was involved in the trade. So he went from San Antonio to New Jersey because he was coaching San Antonio. I went to San Antonio, and I think that's why I ended up in San Antonio. Nobody ever told me. That has to be why. Albeck must have come back and said, hey, there's Robert's kid over there, scored 43 against us, looks pretty good. I think that's how I ended up in San Antonio.
It's great to hear that you excelled in that game against the NBA guys. But the wrinkle where you were traded for a coach, in essence, which is almost unheard of, maybe has never happened before or since, I don't even know, but that's just a crazy story in itself.
Yeah. The only trade that I was in that involved players was when I was with Milwaukee, traded to New Jersey. Then they got, I think, Mickey Johnson and Phil Ford. I think that's the only time players were involved in my trade. I don't know how that worked with Stan Albeck. You can have our coach if we get Fred, and I don't want to get ahead of what you've got going, but when I was at Utah, they traded me to Boston for exhibition games, which was a pretty good deal because Boston, they were the top of the league. You knew you'd sell out to have them come. But I know when we went out to preseason and Kevin McHale, he was a pretty good griper. And he was on the bus. Why do we have to go out to Utah in the preseason? Isn't it bad enough that we have to go out there during the season? And I don't know why. I'm sure it has nothing to do with me.
Nothing to do with you. Part of that deal was the future considerations involved those exhibition games, which was another crazy wrinkle I was very glad to have come across when I was looking at the research there. You returned back to the States after that season in Italy. And as we mentioned, you'd already been the property of basically 3 NBA teams before you played a game.
Before I touched the ball.
Did the property of 3 teams saga, for lack of a better word, did it actually motivate you to make an impression when you had your chance to play in the NBA?
I didn't know anything about Milwaukee. When I came out of college, I was hoping to go to a place, Phoenix, San Antonio. Those were kind of teams that I thought would be a really good fit for me. Milwaukee is the best fit for me, but I didn't know that at the time. So when I came back and I ended up in San Antonio, I thought, yeah, this is a great opportunity. I feel comfortable there in Texas, smaller market. Yeah, I was motivated, but I think I was more scared than anything. I was just thought, I got to make a team. That's how most of my career went. I was always feeling like practice and games. Every time I went out on the court, I felt like I got to make this team. My job's on the line. And that's how I felt when I first going to San Antonio. I was pretty nervous, and I don't know if I ever did figure out how to just say, okay, I'm good enough. I want to be a player, and let's get going. San Antonio was a great place for me. Playing with the Iceman and Artis Gilmore, 2 guys that I just really enjoyed a lot. They were so great. We weren't a very good team that year, but man, they were good guys. They were very accepting of me. I don't know why. I've always felt like, well, are they going to accept me or not? And they were great.
Was there a moment when you were within their orbit and you felt, I'm going to succeed and be a player in this league?
I started playing pretty well, but I was always intimidated by big names. Gene Banks was a big name, being at Duke and all that. And I thought, well, of course, Gene Banks is going to be our starter. And then toward the middle of the year, after we'd been struggling a little bit, I became the starter. And we went on the road. We won 5 games. And I was the starter. And I thought, hey, I don't know. I kind of didn't think too much about it other than let's just go win. Play hard, get out on the court and compete. I do remember that I started having a place on the team where they looked at me a little bit different, looked at me like, okay, this guy can make us better. He's got some skill. He's got some length. He can run. And I think that's what Italy did for me is we couldn't play, so the coach just made us run. I don't think it made us a very good team, but it made me a good runner. And when I came back in the NBA, I was a runner, and it was great.
Well, that's a good advantage to have. And I noticed in a lot of the highlights of your games I was watching before we chatted today, the commentators would often make mention of your agility and speed for someone of your height. That obviously was a key factor in you remaining in the league for that long period of time.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I knew I was never going to have the bulk size that I could play that inside power position, but I felt like if I could run and I could get on the perimeter, that would open up my options. I've been on teams, Utah, Frank Layden, he tried me at the 2 spot. I'd play the 3 spot. I'd play the 4 spot. And I knew that that had to be the kind of player I needed to be. I couldn't focus on being one position. I had to be a kind of player that they could play me in different places. I think that's why I was able to last as long as I did.
As an NBA rookie, you played 79 games for the Spurs and you averaged over 7 points and almost 4 boards per game in just under 20 minutes of contest. You had 26 games in double figures with a season high of 17 points against Golden State. So a strong start in limited minutes and you were making an impact. You also were playing with a rookie, John Paxson, who you obviously beat on that BYU Notre Dame game going back to college. Did you ever remind John of that particular game?
I think we talked about it a little bit. I think John, just remember him grimacing. He said, why did I not just keep him in front of me instead of chasing him? But he was such a great teammate and roommate. We roomed together. I haven't seen him for a long time. I spoke with him on the phone recently. Hope we can get together. But as a teammate, he was as good as they come, and we became really good friends, and I appreciated the relationship with him. And being rookie with him, I felt very fortunate to have played with him, and then to see him go on and play with Chicago and win those championships. I thought, way to go, John. Good for you. He's still in it. He's still working with the Bulls. They respect him a lot. They consult with him quite a bit.
A tremendous career as an executive and deal maker in the NBA, and of course had a fantastic career and just excelled, obviously, as a member of the Bulls and was such a key member of those championship teams in 91 through 1993. Now, I found it interesting that your 5th NBA game was a trip back to Salt Lake to face the Jazz. In the second quarter, based on a report I read last night, you played 11 minutes and had 4 points, 5 rebounds and 1 steal, and the game recap suggested that you were honoured during the game at halftime. Do you remember this, and how was that return home in your first NBA game as an opposition player against the Jazz?
Well, I have no memory of that.
Oh, there you go.
I guess it's possible, but I have no memory of that.
22 games into your second season, you were traded to Utah and you played 52 games to close out the regular season, averaged almost 9 points and 3 rebounds in 17 minutes per game. 5 times you went for 20 or more points. 1985 was the first playoff appearance you'd make in the NBA. Your Jazz roster had guys like Adrian Dantley and a young John Stockton in his rookie season. What was it like stepping into that mix as a home state guy, mixing with those personalities?
Well, it was kind of an interesting way of getting there. It was just before Christmas that I was traded. And the Jazz, John Drew had just been put on suspension for whatever reason, I don't know. And they were looking to pick up somebody. And I had a pretty good year with San Antonio the first year. The second year, Cotton Fitzsimmons comes in, new coach. And, I don't think he was crazy about me. But we were in Cleveland, getting ready to go to the game, getting our bags packed. John Paxson and I were in the same room. Phone rings. John answers the phone. He said, Fred, it's for you. I get on the phone. It's Cotton Fitzsimmons. Said, how would you like to spend Christmas in Utah? What? So I'd rather spend it with the Spurs. I do know that. And he says, well, we just traded you.
Wow.
Everybody got on the bus to go to the game. I got on a taxi to go to the airport and flew to Utah. It was a different culture for sure. Utah wasn't making a lot of money. It was before Larry Miller took over. They were just looking to get some players on the cheap. That's why they drafted John Stockton. I think they knew that they could get him cheap, and they drafted Karl Malone because they could get him cheap, because these are all guys that I don't think they were high on people's list to draft. They went out on those for sure. I loved that team, actually. Mark Eaton, Rich Kelly, Billy Paltz.
The Whopper.
The Whopper. I tell you, sitting on the bench with those guys, watching the guys that go in and try to score on Mark Eaton, and each stand there and tip the ball when they score. He's 7'4". You can't do that. He's 7'4". And Frank Layden walked down the bench. He's screaming, rah, 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 and their gum would fly out of his mouth, and he'd look around and bend over, pick up the gum, and put it back in his mouth. Oh, man, they were some fun, good guys. And we had a decent team, but they were so much fun. Dantley, I loved playing against him in practice every day. He was so skilled, and I learned a whole lot from him. And then playing Stockton at that time, he was like me. We came in off the bench. We were the second unit, second team, and Stockton was 3 years that he was the backup guy.
Yeah, Ricky Green, wasn't it?
Ricky Green was the guy. And Stockton and I knew that going in there with John, if I just kept moving and kept my hands up, that I was going to get the ball in a scoring position. He was so good, but if you didn't have your hands up, that ball was going to go off your shoulder, go off your face, something. Wouldn't look good at all. But I was the kind of player that I loved activity. So we had a totally different second team that come in, and we moved and we ran around, and that was my game, and loved going off picks set by Eaton. It's like, okay, here's this mountain. Use him to get open. And you could. Got open with him, and that was a really, really fun team. Loved that team.
I love hearing these memories. Thanks for sharing them. Now, your second season in Utah, which was the 1986 campaign, that was the rookie year for Karl Malone. How soon did you realize that he was going to stamp, no pun intended, he was going to stamp his authority on the league, given his nickname as the Mailman? When did you know, this guy, he's for real?
It's a tale of two seasons for me. I ended up having a really good end of season with Utah. We beat Houston in the playoffs. We weren't supposed to. I had a good playoff run, and I thought, I think I've made it. I think I've finally got a team where I'm set. This is going to be a good fit for me. They draft this kid from Louisiana Tech. I think he was the 15th player picked. And I got it. Don't know anything about this guy. He's not. Really felt good and comfortable. I thought I finally made it to the NBA. On the 24th of July, that's our celebration of statehood here in Utah, and it happens to be Karl Malone's birthday. Well, he comes in. They just drafted him. They fly him in. We have a big parade down Salt Lake, down State Street in Salt Lake, and the Jazz had a float, and that's, again, they're still trying to build up enthusiasm for the Jazz, trying to bring excitement to Malone. They had a couple of us guys on the float, and I was standing back there, and Karl Malone sat on the front of the float with Frank Layden. They both had their hands up like this as we went down State Street, and the fans were going crazy, and I was standing in the back. I thought, this guy, he thinks this parade's for him. His birthday parade. I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. A few days after that, guys would get together and we'd work out at this gym. And Malone comes in and we start playing. First thing you know, this guy's over in the corner, and he's like this, and this guy over here, he's hurting like this, and he's got laying down. By the time Malone got done with us, he had destroyed every single one of us in this little 5-on-5, and he just beat the crap out of every one of us. That's when I thought, I think this guy's different. I think he's different. His rookie year, it wasn't uncommon for him to shoot air balls from the free throw line. I thought, man, I don't know if this guy, but he was still so effective and so tough. I remember Maurice Lucas, who'd just recently been on the cover of Sports Illustrated as being the enforcer. He and Malone are getting into it. And of course, back then, that's when I thought, oh, you got to respect these guys, veterans. But Malone's out there just battling Maurice Lucas. They're fighting. And Maurice Lucas said, young fella, I'm going to bust you up. And Malone says, let's go. Maurice Lucas, all right, let's just play ball. I don't know. He just came into the league knowing that he was going to be somebody and something. Of course, that was great for him. Not so good for me because that took all my minutes and all my time. And, next thing I know, I go from having a really good year the year before to just sitting and watching. He was a ton of fun to watch, but it wasn't good for my career.
Not the greatest for you, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, Karl Malone. And he just was, you know what? I belong here just like anybody else. In fact, I think I'm bigger and stronger than everybody else, and he was.
In late September of 1986, Utah traded you to Boston. You took part in a Celtics free agent camp or a rookie camp a few months beforehand, from what I've read. The franchise was reeling from the loss of Len Bias and some roster shifts that had happened. What do you recall of that traumatic time for the franchise, but then your desire to actually want to make the team and perform well? How did you balance that, and what was it like to become a Boston Celtic?
Again, Utah had finished up, and it was frustrating. It was a difficult year for me in Utah. I was a restricted free agent. That wasn't going very well. And Frank Layden took me into his office, and he sat me down, and he said, Fred, we're going to offer you this much money over 5 years. We're going to give you a 5-year contract, but we're only going to be able to guarantee the first year. And last year, you're going to get $150,000. And that doesn't seem great. You're going to lock me in, and so I can't try anywhere else. And the most I'm going to make after 5 years is $150,000. And he looked at me and he said, now, Fred, and Frank, he knew a Utah guy. He says, this is a great opportunity for you. You're going to be playing in front of your friends, your family. If I were your dad, I'd say, take the deal. Well, I'm not a very smart guy, but I think I'll wait. Let me just wait on this, talk to my agent. And he said, okay, you go ahead. And so I'm almost certain that Ainge had something to do with it. Boston, Len Bias had that thing happen, so they were looking to find somebody to come in for that. I never asked Danny, but I'll bet you he said, hey, bring Fred. It wasn't even a free agent camp because they had some college kids there, a camp that they had where we played for a week. They invited me to go back to that. I went back and played really well. And I could tell there was one moment I passed it inbounds, stepped in, shot a three-pointer, and I had a feeling from the coaches when they saw that, said, this might be our guy. They made an offer to me, and of course, Utah matched it, which was disappointing. I didn't think they would, but they did. They matched the offer, and so I was still Utah's property. And then that's when they worked out that deal where they were going to trade me to Boston for 2 exhibition games. That's how I got to Boston. They had just won a championship. Stockton and I, that summer, we did some camps throughout the state, and we were rooming together. We were watching Celtics and Houston playing the championship, and I looked at Stockton and I said, I would love to be there. I would love to play for a championship. And Stockton just kind of looked over at me and says, yeah, that'd be cool. But he kind of said it like, yeah, you can wish and you can hope. I'm going to be there. I learned a lot from him that summer, too. Some of the drills that he does and the work ethic that he had, the tenacity that he has. But anyway, so I ended up in Boston. I was intimidated. They just won a championship. I was scared to death to meet the chief. I was scared to death to meet Larry Bird and Kevin McHale. And the first practice I went to, I was in the locker room. They had these little locker rooms. I was sitting there getting ready. Oh, man, these guys are going to start coming in, and I'm nervous. And I never felt like I belonged, but I thought, what's that chief going to be like? Because I never saw the chief, any emotion, anything. Anytime I watched him play, played against him, and I'm getting dressed, and all of a sudden, he walks in the locker room and says, what's up, fellas? How's everything going? Oh, okay, cool. That was actually a really good moment for me to see him do that.
He did come across as quite stoic in his appearance, Robert. So it's good to hear that in amongst his teammates and those he's familiar with. He's got a different side to him. How did it feel for you to join forces again with your former BYU teammates, Danny Ainge and Greg Kite?
It was great. I love Greg and Danny both. Danny was so helpful. He'd been established there. I didn't have a place. He allowed me to stay in their home for a month or so while we were going through training camp. He helped me get acclimated. Red Sox were playing the World Series that year. We went to a World Series game, and Danny, he had free reign. He could go anywhere he wanted. He didn't like the seats we had, so he says, you know what? Let's see if we can get up in a suite. And so he just goes, Danny Ainge, and we end up in a suite. Oh, wow, this is kind of interesting to see the power these guys have. But it was way fun being with those guys. The other guys on the team, I learned to love a lot and had a good time with them. It was hard being a bench player on that team because if we won, of course, it was because of Bird and McHale and all those. And losing, it was because we didn't have a strong bench. So that part was a little bit tough. It enhanced my career in that just being on that team, playing with Bird every day and playing with McHale and Parrish and all those winners, I think it made me more marketable throughout the rest of the league. And that's how I ended up going to Milwaukee and being desired there.
Great to hear the background behind all this. You did carve out a role on that Celtics team, and it was stacked, no doubt, under Coach KC Jones. That 1987 team, you had a East title run to the NBA Finals, and including the playoffs, you played 93 games in that season. You alluded to it just a moment ago, but what perhaps stood out most about joining that title-level locker room with those Hall of Fame greats? Was there a key difference that you experienced as a member of the Celtics versus anything else that you'd done to that point in your career, Fred?
Well, one thing that was noticeable is everywhere we went, every arena we went to, it was sold out. And I'd never experienced that before. Utah, you'd have a good crowd, but you wouldn't have a sellout. San Antonio, there wouldn't be a sellout. But with Boston, everywhere we went, it was a sellout and it was a championship game. Everybody was playing their very best basketball because to them, they're playing the best team in the league. It's just like when I was with Milwaukee and everywhere Chicago went, it was a big deal. There's a different feeling. And that's what it was with Boston. And then you have a guy like Larry Bird. Everybody wants to see every night he's going to have a great game, but sometimes he had great games, and those were amazing to see him at that level and to see the kind of things that he could do. And I feel like when I was around him, his real freedom in life was being on that basketball court. I don't think he was crazy about the attention that he got outside the basketball. Didn't like his privacy be taken away. But when he was on the court, that was his, okay, I'm free. I don't have to deal with the press. I don't have to deal with fans coming with me all the time. I just get to play basketball. He was great to play with. He was great to watch. He wasn't always fun to play with because if I was slow doing something or made a mistake, that was something that was so obvious to him 3 plays earlier that I should have been ready for that, or 3 seconds earlier. I should have been ready and adjusted to it already because he knew where everything needed to be. He saw things so much more clear than I ever did. So if I didn't see them the way he saw them, just, why can't you see this? And he'd be frustrated and kind of give you a snarly look.
I know exactly the sort of look you're talking about. Saw it many times on videotapes over the years. He was on the back of 3 straight MVP seasons when you joined the team. They'd won the title in 1986, had been to the finals as well those previous 2 years before that. One particular game I would like to ask you about, see if you recall this. It was November the 12th of 1986. Larry Bird got ejected in the first quarter of a game against the Milwaukee Bucks, of all teams. KC Jones calls your number, and you had a 23-point, 12 rebound and 6 assist performance in just 34 minutes in a 8-point victory. Does any of that ring a bell to you, and do you recall that opportunity to stand out on the parquet floor in Boston?
Well, I just remember with Boston playing against Milwaukee and having good games. And even with Utah, I had good games against Milwaukee. When I was with Boston, I had opportunities. I know Mikal had some injuries, so I started for him. And with Larry was out, I'd started for him. I'm not surprised he got tossed. May have had dinner reservations somewhere. But they had battles against Milwaukee. It was intense battles. It's just a little bit like Detroit. There was something about Milwaukee that I had good games against them. It was a good matchup for me. Playing against Terry Cummings, I had great respect for him, but I felt like I could guard him. I kind of knew what were his special shots, and I could disrupt it just enough that I could defend him really well. And Ricky Pierce playing against him, I don't know. There was something that I just felt comfortable playing against Milwaukee, and fortunately that's true because that's where I was able to get my opportunity to go play in Milwaukee, where I just loved living there for 10 years and loved playing there for 5 years, loved my teammates. I wish I could be a little more specific.
There's a lot of games. It's hard to remember every single moment.
Yeah, I remember every time Larry Bird got mad at me. I remember every shot I missed. I just don't remember the shots I made.
I was fascinated to read about that in particular. And then per the Boston Globe, and I only found this morning just before we got chatting, you beat the third quarter buzzer in this game, and it brought up the Celtics' 100th point of the night, and it led to this quote from the Boston Globe. Who could have ever envisioned Boston's fans chanting, "Fred, Fred, Fred," without thinking they were watching the Flintstones? Pretty fantastic. Hopefully that gives you a nice little memory.
I'd like to go back. I'd like to see.
In June of 1988, you were selected by the Miami Heat in the expansion draft. They then traded you to Milwaukee, the team that drafted you back in 1982. As you said, the most productive stretch of your career in 5 seasons there with the Bucks. How was that arrival to Milwaukee, settling in there in Wisconsin?
I felt anxiety every time I'd go and meet the new guys, the new team. I didn't know much about Milwaukee even then, after being in the league for a while. All we knew was how cold it was from going from the hotel to walk across the street to go to the arena. But I respected a great deal how they played. They were physical, they were tough, they had tough guys on the team, and I didn't know how I'd fit in there. I didn't know anything about the city or the town. I had just signed with Boston. I was a full free agent. I shouldn't have signed with them because that just gave them an opportunity to put me on the expansion list, which probably cost me a little money. If I'd just been a free agent, knowing Milwaukee wanted me, I could have got a little more money, but that's not the way my career went. The first week I was in Milwaukee just visiting, I felt at home. It felt comfortable. Dale Harris, I loved him, my favorite coach. With him, he believed that I could be a decent player. He was the first guy to tell me, say, hey, we run plays to get you that shot. You've got to shoot it. I've had coaches tell me not to shoot, but I haven't had coaches say, oh, you've got to shoot that. Wow, that's great. It was a great place to live for my family and me. And we had good teams. We were in the Central Division. It was a tough conference, really good teams, but we competed at a high level with those guys. I loved it. I love going back there now. I try to go back a couple times a year. It's just been a great place for me.
Love to hear that. For our listeners' context, in the 1989 season, you played 71 regular season games despite suffering a fractured cheekbone, which required surgery after you had a collision with Bill Cartwright. In the playoffs in 89 against Detroit, you had a then career high 33 points on 12 of 19 shooting and 9 of 11 from the line. Looking back, where does that fantastic performance against the bad boys rate for you personally?
It rates up there pretty high because it's on YouTube.
I saw it today.
So I can watch it.
Lambert fumbled away a layup. 3-on-2 break Milwaukee. Moncrief threw it away, may have been deflected. Roberts, good job to get it back. Shoots on the run. Good. He's got 10. It's a 7-point lead. Listen to this crowd as timeout is called. And the folks in Milwaukee are proud of their Bucks.
2 things. Wow, that's great. I had a great game, but man, we were sure a lot slower back then. The game is so much more faster now. And the same was true when we played in 89 compared to when we watched guys playing in 69. It was a totally different game. Now watching it, I think, man, it's different. And I wonder if you grow up playing that way, playing where everybody's on perimeter, everybody's sprinting and running and it's fast, I expect that we would have been able to do that. But that game, it was another one of those games where we only had, I think, 7 guys dressed. Everybody was injured or hurt. I remember I threw up this terrible shot. Sally was guarding me. I don't even think I saw the basket.
Here's the red-hot Fred Roberts. Sally tries to shut him down. He backs in, fakes, fires. Got it.
I tell you, Sally played great defense that time. That was just a very tough shot by Fred Roberts.
He has 12 in the game. 6 of 7 from the field.
And that went in. Thought, okay, I'm going to go for it. I thought, why not? I can't be taken out of the game. There's only 2 guys over on the bench. So I'm going to be playing the whole game. I might as well just let it fly. I'm making shots. I had pretty good confidence against Detroit for some reason. They had great defenders, Rodman and Sally, Horn, those guys. And then watching the replays, which sounds like you watched today, I got some calls. Referees that said, Roberts is going. Let's put him on the free throw line. And I know that's the way referees work a little bit. You get it going, and they'll help you out a little. And they definitely helped me out in that game. Frustrated Lambeer a little bit. You go, well, you're right, Bill. You didn't do anything, but I'm going to shoot a free throw.
Roberts takes a drive. Partially blocked and a foul. On Lambeer.
His mouth was agog at times. He wasn't sure what was going on. Isaiah Thomas was confused by some of the calls that the refs were making. For some context, Terry Cummings, Larry Kristoviak, Paul Pressey, and Paul Markeski were all not playing due to various ailments and injuries. As you said, 7 players suited up, and that was it. You had to get approval from the league just to play because of the few players that were actually available. So quite an incredible moment to be able to step up and have a then career high of 33 points.
Yeah, I didn't want the season to end. Didn't like it at all, and I just felt hot. I felt like we could beat those guys.
Roberts, what a night he's had. 24 for Fred Roberts, playing the game of his life when his team needs him the most.
Looking back, I said, we could stay close, but in the end, they were going to win the game. But it was a ton of fun to be able to do that in the playoffs and to go in there and have Rick Barry, who was commentating that game, come up to me and say, hey, nice job.
32 for Roberts. 3 points.
That was pretty special.
I implore anybody listening to go check out Fred's 33-point performance versus the Pistons. Courtesy of basketballreference.com. Across 13 days in 1991, so March the 30th through April the 11th, you had scoring performances of 23, 32, a career-high 34 versus the Nets, and 26 points. When you reflect back on your Milwaukee tenure, did any particular moments or series, perhaps the one we just talked about, stand out more than anything else? That's some kind of scoring reign there over 2 weeks.
Everything started coming together toward the end of the years. I usually played better. In Utah, I remember, at the end of the year, I had great games. Maybe not so much in Boston, but I know in Milwaukee I did. I don't know if I just got to the point where, hey, I'm going for it. I'm going to play. And, some of these guys are tired. They're looking for the season to be over. That's when I felt my sharpest. That's where I felt my shot come together. My conditioning, everything came together. When I had that string of games scoring 20 plus, I was involved in more of the plays. They'd call more plays that I was involved in. Teammates, they were looking to me. Never came into camp thinking, hey, I'm going to be the guy. I came in the guy, I'm a supporting role, and that's okay with me. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I'd come in there and say, I'm going to be Karl Malone, where I'm just going to destroy everybody, and everybody's going to be calling the medics at the end of practice. That would have served me a lot better, but I didn't have that personality.
It's great to hear you reflecting on this, and You had some standout performances, and I'd just like to shine a light on some of those things so that the listeners know the impact that you had, particularly when you were starring there throughout those 5 years with the Bucks. Now, an interesting little side note here, in mid-August of 1993, you flew to Europe and joined FC Barcelona on a one-year deal. You averaged around 15 points and 6 rebounds a game. You won the 1994 Spanish Cup, the Copa del Rey. A few weeks later, you led FC to the EuroLeague Final Four. How did the Spanish ACB compare to your NBA or even the Italy experience at the start of your pro career? And what did it mean to lift a trophy when you're in Europe at that stage of your career?
Winning that was pretty cool. They're doing that in the NBA now where they have that interleague championship. That's kind of what the Copa del Rey was, interleague championship where we won that. And then at the end of the year, Madrid won. I had this agent who came to me and he said, yeah, that's nice, Fred. It's nice you won, but Sabonis, who was playing for Madrid.
I noticed that.
Yeah. When he decides to win, I'm sorry, you're not going to win. Shouldn't tell me that. I feel like we've got a chance. We beat them, the series against them during the year. He said, no. When Sabonis wants to play, you have no chance. And he was right. Sabonis was something special. That's another mistake I think for sure I made. I did enjoy my Spanish playing over there and being on a good team. We were on a pretty good team, but I should have stayed here. I should have stayed in the league. I was a free agent. I was nervous. I still had the mentality where, I'm lucky to be on a team. And so I didn't stick around and try to get on a team. And I should have. Sure, I would have found a team and probably had good success. In fact, going to Chicago would have been a good place for me. I would have been a good fit there, a guy like Ed Neely.
Love Ed Neely.
Yeah, guys like that. That could have been a good spot for me. I think I would have been a good fit backing up Horace Grant or Scottie Pippen. I guess I have that dream occasionally of being on the Bulls team where you can win championships. Everybody wants to win a championship. But going over to Europe and being on the Barcelona team, that was one of the top teams in Europe. Madrid was another top team in Europe. We had pretty good guys. I played with Tony Massenberg. He was a great teammate, a tough guy. For a 6'7", 6'8" guy playing against Sabonis and some of these other big giants, he was fantastic. He was a tough, hard-working, jumping freak. And we were one of the better teams. I didn't care much for our coach. I don't think the coach did us any favors by the way he coached us. But we were good enough and we had good enough players that we would be one of the top 2 teams in the Spanish League. And then we played in the European Cup. And that was wild. We played in Turkey. We stayed in Istanbul and got on the bus. Once we went over the bridge from the European side to the Asian side, it was like going through some kind of curtain because it was a complete different experience, the European side compared to the Asian side. But that's where we played our games, on the Asian side. We were driving to the arena and along the sides of the road, and on the side of the road screaming at us and honking and booing. And they were throwing something at the bus. Let's just get in that arena and get safe here. So we got to the arena about 2 hours before the game, and I thought, oh, good, we're safe, and I'm going to go out and get some shots up. I walked out onto the gym floor after getting dressed, and it was packed. Everybody was already there, and they were singing, and they were hollering, they were smoking. The whole place was smoke-filled. Whoa, this is crazy. And then we went and did our warm-ups, and in warm-ups, the visiting team chooses the basket, which basket they want to start out on. So we choose our basket. We're warming up. Well, here come the Turkish team. They decide they're going to warm it up on the same basket. I said, no, we've got this basket. No, we want this basket. So we got 2 teams doing layup drills in the same basket. And you look down the other one, there's nobody down there. Look at the referee, say, you guys going to do something? We get to choose the basket. We're not doing anything because these people up in the stands, it just looked intimidating. It was awful. We lost that game, so we had to come back and play them again in the same arena. Said, we're going to win this game, dang it, you guys. We're going to come back and we're going to beat these guys, and we're not going to let all that stuff that's going on outside. And we did. We beat them the second game, and then we got to go play in the Final Four of the European Cup, which was pretty awesome. I think we played in Greece. No, we played in Israel. I think it was Israel. And we played Barcelona. That's their name, but it was the other team, a Spanish team. I think Madrid, Barcelona, us, and maybe the Greek team were the Final Four.
Y ahora hay triple de Fred Roberts.
We got beat by a team that we beat in our Spanish league regularly, so that was pretty upsetting. And Epi, the great Epi from Spain, he comes in after the game and he just starts screaming at our coach and getting in his face. We had a big lead. We were up 15 or something like that, maybe 10. We were playing man-to-man up till the time the coach put us in his zone, and, man, they made a run at us. They started making three-pointers, and we ended up getting beaten. Epi did not like the move that the coach made.
Let him know about it?
He let him know about it. The three memorable locker room screamings between coaches and players was that one, Adrian Dantley and Frank Layden, and then this when I was in France for a month. Players, I've never seen a player just get in the coach's face and scream at him, except for AD. Frank was screaming at AD, and AD would just sit there and he'd just wrap tape around his wrist. And Frank had yelled at him for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I've read that they had a very interesting dynamic, and I think Frank fined him maybe one penny or something crazy, whatever particular reason, and then that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. You mentioned briefly there that you would have liked to have played with the Chicago Bulls, because I did read reports where after you returned back and before you got back into the league, you played briefly in the CBA with the Chicago Rockers. How close were you to actually becoming a member of the Bulls, given that Horace Grant and Scott Williams had both departed after the 1994 playoffs?
I don't know. I think it's just a fantasy in my head that I would have been a good fit and it would have been awesome to play there. And maybe if I were a little smarter, if I'd had an agent who could have worked that, it may have been something that could have happened. But mostly it's just a fantasy. It would have been interesting after hearing about Michael Jordan in practice and the way he was, because playing against him was something else, but playing against him every single day in practice and to hear how just driven he was, that would have been something else.
Well, a lot of players say that his practice mentality was even crazier than game day situations, so I can only imagine what could have unfolded there. Just moving ahead a little bit, the Cleveland Cavaliers signed you to a couple of 10-day contracts in February of 1995, and then you played out the rest of the season with the team. What was it like briefly for you just to step into Mike Fratello's rotation?
I was really fortunate to have that opportunity, and I liked that team. It was a good team. Fratello ran a good program. He was a smart coach. I liked that experience. I think it was really good for me. I played well enough and a good enough fit that they kept me on throughout that year, and we went to the playoffs. Liked living in Cleveland. That was great. Close enough to Milwaukee where I could fly. We had a couple of days off. I could fly home. I remember that was a team that I felt like we had good potential. It just so happens that New York and Chicago and those teams were just better that year. Mark Price, Hot Rod, and then we had Michael Cage. That was a group of good guys. One of my closest friends now, Greg Dryling, was on that team.
Oh, right, yep.
He's somebody that you'd have a kick out of talking to.
I'd love to chat to Greg. I think he was on maybe the 1981 All-American team.
He was one of them. You could be talking 2 or 3 days with him.
In early October of 1995, you signed with the LA Lakers as a free agent and you reunited with Coach Del Harris. How did that opportunity come to be?
I think it was just Del Harris. He got me there. I think he was looking for a veteran. He was looking for a guy who he knew who could come in off the bench and help the team a little bit. And that was a little intimidating because, LA, that was one of the great teams. great organizations. And so going out there, I had expectations. They'd just had a pretty good playoff run the year before. They were a young team, and I think Dale just was looking for some veteran. I hate to say that I could give him some leadership, but I think he was hoping that I could bring in something, some kind of stability. And Dale was always great to me. He was always a coach that gave me opportunities to be the best player I could be. So I was able to sneak in another year, played with some good guys. Well, that's when Hakeem went crazy in Houston. They were just so good. We didn't match up well or whatever. We couldn't beat them. A lot of teams couldn't beat them. And those were the great years for Hakeem. Even just sitting there on the other team watching him, wow, I had so much respect for him.
Quick detour to January the 29th of 1996. It's a famous date in NBA history. Magic Johnson signed as a free agent with the Lakers, but someone had to make way for Magic's arrival in LA, and coincidentally, one Fred Roberts was placed on the injured list. How do you recall those two transactions taking place? You were effectively making way for Magic to be on the roster. You'd play together later in the season, but how was that whole reaction in Tinseltown to Magic coming back to the NBA after quite a few years out of the game?
Well, that was an interesting year. Magic worked out with us quite a bit. He'd come to practices, and throughout the year, had this rumor, oh, Magic's going to come back. Magic's going to come back. And a couple of guys on the team, they've been saying that for 2 or 3 years. We're good, but coach said, we're not there yet. If we can get Magic back. And so there's all this rumbling, and plus with him coming to practice and working out with us, coming and doing his own workouts, seemed to be in great shape. Well, you know what? This really might happen. And then it happens, and Dale says, hey, Fred, we're going to put you on the injured list. All right. All right. I'll come and watch games and eat hot dogs and sit over there and watch basketball, have a great seat. Maybe I should have been a little more upset, but I kind of felt like that was my role anyway, just to accommodate whatever they needed. Just got to go watch games and hang out in the locker room, still practice and work out. Wasn't much of an injury. I think it was just dandruff. That's what they put.
Nice one.
Yeah. Going into the playoffs, I get back on the roster. We were just grasping for straws a little bit. We were hoping that Magic was going to be the Magic of old. We were hoping that he was going to just make the difference. And I don't know how many years he was out before he came back. You probably know.
He retired after the 91 finals, so he sat out 92, but played the All-Star game in Orlando. Did a few preseason games, I think. Was going to come back, but didn't, and sat out 93, 94, 95.
The season's long enough. I mean, you see what it did to Jordan.
Yeah, he effectively missed 4 seasons and then came back and played a different position, had bulked up, was much stronger, I guess. Do you remember much about that comeback game against Golden State, where he did that crazy look away and made Latrell Sprewell go for the fake and then scored on the layup, and the crowd just went nuts when he came out of retirement?
Yeah, I do remember the excitement that he brought, and that was part of it. You know, why not bring him back and have all this energy? It was a whole different feel with the crowd and the energy. And when he makes his first basket, it just blew up the place. I hadn't thought about that very much, but just now I'm thinking, yeah, that was wild. Him making that first basket and being a very different player than he was 4 years earlier. But, you know, we still tried to build our style around him, let him take control, even in a post-up position, try to run the offense from that post-up position. Sitting out 4 years and playing against young guys, that's kind of a tough ask.
We talked about this in the lead up to the chat today. I'm 99% sure that when Gervin returned to the Lakers, that made you the only player in NBA history to be teammates with both Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. How surreal is it to think, looking back on your career, that you were teammates with two of the greatest icons and players in the history of the game?
Of course, my experience with Larry, it was a bigger experience. 2 years. I was a bigger fan of Larry than I was of Magic. That's somebody maybe I could be. I could be a Larry Bird with my skill set. Magic, a little bit, but not as much. And being around Larry that much and learning what a character he is, just a warrior. That's what I would say both of them are. They're just both warriors. I mean, Larry, the tougher things he got, Mahorn and Lambier and Robin, the more they beat him up, the more they scratched his eyes out, the more he seemed to like it. Yes, I can still beat these guys as bad as they are. It just lit a fire in him that he loved, playing against the very, very best in the challenging moments. I could just see in his eyes, sometimes he'd get bored. If he playing against a poor defender, he'd just say, I'm going to shoot it left-handed this time, or I'm going to shoot right. He did it to me in practice often. Rick Carlin and I were playing one-on-one before practices, and we did often, and Larry stood over in the corner, and he watched us. He says, "You guys are terrible." "What do you mean?" "Don't say that." And he says, "Oh, you guys are terrible. I could beat you both." "No, you can't." And he says, "Yes, I can. I can beat you both. In fact," says, "let's go right now. $5. $5 a person. I'm going to play $5. And I said, "Well, all right." And he says, "And I don't get a dribble." Took him forever to warm up, and so he just wasn't going to dribble. And we said, "Okay, let's go." He said, "I get the ball first." And so we gave him the ball. You know how silly it looks when two guys are guarding one guy and he's not able to dribble. We're playing to 5 baskets, and he shot it, basket. He got the ball back, and was a little bit more up on him and trying to get shot at basket. So he's ahead 2-0. I said, "Rick, we don't stop this guy." And we knew we had to get our hand on the ball because if he was able to release it, it was going to go in. "We'll stop this guy. We're going to get cut today." We got our hand on the ball, and we ended up beating him 5-3 or something like that. Thank goodness. But that's the kind of guy he loved challenging situations. And I think Magic was the same way. When he came back, I think he knew that he probably wasn't up to being able to do that, but he loved a challenge. He loved being in a situation where he felt challenged. That's what I saw in those two guys. Even though they went about the game differently, when it came to the challenge, that's where they'd come alive.
Fantastic stories, and thanks so much for sharing them over the course of this conversation. To close out your NBA career in early October 1996, you signed as a free agent, I believe, with Dallas. You then played 12 games for the Mavericks in the 1997 season. When did you know it was time to retire, Fred?
It was a complete surprise. Dallas, they called and they said, "Hey, we want you to come down here. We got a contract. We want you to be on the team." I was home in Milwaukee. I hadn't played for at least a month. I didn't expect to be on a team. Thought it was over. So I get that call. And I said, "Well, when do I need to be there?" They said, "We need you there in a couple of days." So I hung up the phone and went outside and started running around the block once or twice. And then I went down. Gosh, I remember the first practice. Every time I'd try to make a quick move, I'd fall on the floor. And I just was so out of shape. My legs were rubbery. I ended up getting 2 big blisters on my feet like this, bloody. It was awful. I wasn't ready. But then when I finally got in shape and I could play a little bit, it was a weird year. Jason Kidd, he didn't want to be there. Jimmy Jackson didn't want to be there. It was
Marl Mashburn?
He didn't want to be there. We had those 3 guys, and they were all trying to get out of there. I don't know if they saw that this is a sinking ship. I didn't know what was going on with their contracts, all that kind of stuff, but it was obviously a team that had given up, but it gave me an opportunity to get another year. Again, I spent some time on the injured list. Then when I came back, I was with Greg Dreiling after a game, sitting in the locker room next to each other, eating a hot dog. And when Don Nelson walked in, he'd just taken over the team. He walked in. Greg was more back behind, so he couldn't see him, and he saw me. He called the next morning. I was in practice, and I was gone. He cut me. Well, he cut me in Milwaukee. He cut me in Dallas. I went to practice. It was February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1997. Got a phone call in the locker room. Well, that's weird. I never get a phone call in the locker room. I wonder if everybody's okay with my family. Pick up the phone. It was Don Nelson. "Fred, this is Don Nelson. We're going to let you go." I just hung up the phone. Depression. I felt so depressed. Went back to the locker and I started getting out of my practice gear. What are you doing? They just let me go. Put my stuff in my bag. Went back to our apartment that we were renting at the time and laid in bed for, I think, 3 days.
Wow.
I was pretty depressed. Well, that was hard, but I was actually lucky to get that last year in.
Thank you so much for your openness and honesty. Don Nelson put a temporary stop to the beginning of your NBA career, and then he maybe contributed to the end some 15 years later.
He shut it down. Again, in my brain, it's because he saw me eating the hot dog and not Greg Dryland.
Greg was smart and just hid behind you.
Just hid behind me and eating a hot dog. And a few years later, I went to Milwaukee. They had a golf gathering or whatever, and saw Don Nelson in the cafe. And I went over and I said, Don Nelson, the guy who cut me twice. So that was good to kind of at least get that one in on him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He had to cut somebody because that's when they brought in Sean Bradley and all those guys.
There was no love for Fred Roberts on Valentine's Day in 1997.
There sure wasn't.
After your on-court career ended, you returned to Utah and moved into education. I read that you began teaching 6th grade in 2007. You served as a principal for a number of years. You earned your master's degree, so some great achievements already there post-NBA. How was that transition from guarding the NBA's best to becoming involved in the classroom setting?
Yeah, well, it was actually tough. I mean, I thought that I was prepared for it. I thought that, I kept myself in a place where I could make that transition, but it was really difficult. We were in Milwaukee, and my wife and I, we said, are we going to move back to Utah, or are we just going to stay here? I had an opportunity. I scouted with Milwaukee for a year, and they invited me back the next year to scout. And I just thought, my wife's parents were getting elderly, and all of our family were back in Utah, and it's different. If you're a scout, you're on the road all the time. As a player, you're on the road when you play games, but you come home, scout, every game's on the road. I didn't think that was a good fit for me. We come back to Utah, moved back here, and I actually went to work with my brother for a little bit. And then I had this opportunity to be a teacher at a school where our kids were going, a little private school. And at Christmas time, the director, she left, and they asked if I would be the new director. Just out of nowhere. No real experience with education at all, but yeah. So I became the director for 5 years. That was a really great experience. And then they let me go, brought in somebody else. And so I went back and finished school. And then I found this opportunity with this charter school, and they hired me as a 6th grade teacher, and that's when I went and got my master's in education. So I was legitimate, and that's been a great run. I've been able to teach, still teaching this year. Simple gig right now. I just have 2 classes, so I'm kind of quarter time, but it keeps me in the school, it keeps me teaching. I have a little 8th grade, 9th girls basketball team. We won the championship the last 2 years. I had 3 granddaughters on the team the last 3 years.
That's fantastic.
It was awesome. Of the 20 years I've been there, those were for sure our very best teams. And to be able to do that with granddaughters, it was a ton of fun.
I don't have any children, my wife and I. We've just got 2 dogs. So I don't know, but can there be anything better than being able to coach family, even winning a couple of championships as well?
Yeah, it was so much fun to be at practice with them, to see them develop. They got to be pretty good. They just want to play volleyball now, but I had them for a couple of years playing basketball. They're good athletes. They were tough. And then we win that championship and be able to stand there and hold my girls after a championship was a great moment for sure. Maybe the greatest moment.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that. That's so good. I didn't know that history there. Thanks for bringing it up.
Well, I had to have something you didn't know.
I'd just love to ask you about the jersey numbers that you wore throughout your career. You wore numbers including 34, 25, I think you wore overseas in Italy, 11 with the Spurs, 33 with the Jazz, 31 in Boston, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, 44 in Milwaukee and Dallas, 34 in Milwaukee as well in your last year there, and 24 with the Lakers. Any significance to those numbers whatsoever, Fred?
Well, I started out, my oldest brother in high school, his number was 34. So I wanted to wear that number.
Love it.
Because he had that number. And then going to BYU, I wanted to keep the number 34. I was able to do that. Really, in the NBA, I wasn't one of those guys that could choose a number. I'd walk in the locker room, here's your jersey. The only time I chose a number was with Milwaukee, and Paul Mulkeski, who had been with us and was a great friend of mine, he left, and so I thought, I'm going to wear Paul's number. So I asked for 44. I got that number. The only significance really was that, and the number 34 was my brother's number. They said, here's your jersey, Roberts. Take it or leave it.
That's funny. My wife and I went to the States in 2020 and just before the pandemic, and we went to Las Vegas and had a chance to meet up with Paul and his wife, Linda.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was fantastic. He's a guest on the show many years ago, Paul, Big Mo. And I mentioned that we'd be heading over to the US and we were going to Las Vegas. And he said, well, I'm in Las Vegas. Come and see me. Yeah, had a great evening. Pleased to hear that you took his number after he left Milwaukee.
Yeah, Paul, he was so much fun. Such a good guy. It's fun to see him every summer down at the Legends reunions. Great teammate. Another guy that all you had to do was circle around him. You're going to get open at some point because he was big and wide enough. And he didn't mind setting picks.
I think he was called Speed Bump. Nickname was Speed Bump, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe.
Your nickname on Basketball Reference is Norman. Do you mind elaborating on what Norman is for your nickname?
Well, when I went to Boston, there was a practice where I took a fall or I got hit or something, and I was a little bit dingy, and I had this buzz cut back then and a beard. The movie Psycho had come out that year. And Dennis Johnson says, you're looking kind of crazy, Fred. I think I'm going to call you Norman Bates. You're Norman Bates.
Oh, I love it.
From Dennis Johnson.
Oh, that's fantastic. Rest in peace to DJ. That's a great call by him. As soon as you said Psycho, I thought, Norman Bates, of course. One of the things I did notice in a lot of the articles that I had a look at, your beard and your haircut were referenced an inordinate amount of times. There was some fascination with your beard throughout the years. I don't know if your teammates also were that way as well.
When I first went to San Antonio, Mo McComb was our coach. He says, we're just not tough enough. We don't have enough guys growing beards and drinking beer. We just need more of that. And I said, well, I can't drink the beer, but I'll grow a beard. Well, that's what I did. I grew the beard. And then in Boston, I don't know what happened. I never did have great hair, and I decided to shave it before I went back to Boston. And, well, I'll grow a beard too. And I went back there, and Ainge saw me, and he goes, Fred, I think I better warn you. These guys like to tease people. You're going to be teased. Really? Okay. I'm already scared enough, and now you tell me that. In Milwaukee, I had the flat top for a while, and it was just kind of a new old thing.
It was almost like there was a haircut or a beard wash for Fred Roberts for whatever reason.
Just wasn't that much basketball stuff to talk about, so they went to the beard.
It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show, Fred. You've just shared some tremendous stories. You've had a great career, and I meant what I said at the start of the episode when you carved out a really fascinating career, and I think we've learned that over the last couple of hours. I hope we can have a chance to chat again someday.
I hope so. If you come back to the U.S., you come in the area, let us know.
I'd love to look you up. Thanks again. It's been a real treat.
Adam, thank you very much. Good luck with your show.
Thanks for listening. Shout out to, and I'll just spell this one out, CMMMMMM. C and then 7 M's. Yeah, I've got no idea. But thank you for a recent 5-star Apple Podcasts USA review titled Nice Niche, or Niche, I guess. And it reads, quote, "Just what I needed, off the beaten path from the hot take culture in basketball media," end quote. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm aiming for. If you enjoyed this episode, give the show a follow, share it with someone who'd enjoy it, and maybe leave a rating or review so more Hoops fans can find these conversations. Everything podcast related is at basketballrecord.com. Reach me via the show notes link, email adam@basketballrecord.com, or follow at @bballrecordpod on socials.